Hello and welcome. Today I've decided I'm going to do a bit of experimentation with the exhaust on my 2018 Honda Goldwing. It's a very personal decision what kind of note you like out of a motorbike, and I thought, well, let's have a bit of a play. On the internet, you would have noticed, if you're into the 2018 Plus Goldwing, that Remus, the company Remus, has brought out a set of mufflers or slip-ons for the 2018 Plus Goldwing. There's been a few reviews on it, and I'm quite impressed by them. You can adjust the sound level by an actuated butterfly valve in the muffler via a switch. Great idea, but at $4,500 or $4,000 Australian, I can't justify that on my bike. So I thought to myself, what can I do as a bit of an experiment, a bit of a play around, to actually change the note of the Goldwing. Now I understand that the previous model Goldwing was a little bit quieter and the 18 Plus got a little bit throatier. Some people do, some people don't like it, and it's a personal choice. I prefer a little bit more of a grumble or a rumble out of my motorcycles, I always have. And I thought to myself, okay, let's experiment. One consideration when selecting mufflers is the fact that on the right hand side you'll see there's a lot less space because of the swing arm for the actual muffler. So I couldn't get a very broad one. On the left hand side you can see there's heaps of space because that's almost a fully round cylinder. I thought, what options have I got? And I got onto eBay and I found a set of small mufflers, or what they call shotguns, I believe, and they were $50 each. And I thought, well, for $50 each, I can have a bit of a play around and it's not going to do any harm. What I do is, when I do modifications, I don't modify the OEM equipment. So that way, if something doesn't work, I can put it all back, no harm, no foul. The first thing I needed to do was to check that the muffler I bought would actually fit inside the cover of the motorbike, and luckily it did. So with all that information in hand, I decided to move ahead, put the bike up on the hoist, take the rear wheel off, which then gave me a lot more access to the area I was working in, and of course it saves my back. Before I took off the original Honda muffler setup, I made up a template just to make sure that when I finished, that the rear end of the bike, the look was the same as OEM. So how far it drops down, how far it sat in from the edge of the bike. In this diagram, I just show the steps required to take the OEM cover and muffler off. If you want detailed example of how to do this, then go to Cruiseman's Garage and see the steps he takes when he's installing a Remus exhaust system. I started to pull the bike apart. I thought I'd check the sound using a phone app decibel meter, and it was very interesting because when I pulled the exhaust apart, it has got a compliance plate on it which says maximum 80 decibel A. Now when I measured it, have a look at the graphs that are showing on the screen, the absolute max is 80 decibels, so it was very interesting. So what I'm going to do further on is I'll do a sound check of the open cats, just if you're curious, and then obviously at the end of it I'll do another sound check with the modified pipes on it. What was most involved in this bit of an experiment was the fact that the Honda OEM mufflers actually had all the brackets that the outside cover connects to. So when I got these aftermarket ones, obviously they're just a straight cylinder. Most of my time was spent on modifying or making and fabricating brackets that attach to the chrome muffler, and then fit into the actual cover. That, and then as we progress, you'll see other fabrication I've done. If you're interested in what a Goldwing sounds like without the mufflers on, straight out of the cat, that's what I've got here. So I'll just have a few little blips. So there you go, it's a lot deeper note, but not excessively loud. I had to make a small modification to the mufflers that I bought. They had a round tail on them, so I had to squash them a little bit to make them oval, so they sit neatly in the hole in the tail of the cover. Right, I've got the mufflers, all the brackets welded to the mufflers and then slid into the covers. There was one small modification I did have to do to the motorbike cover, and that was mount that pin down the bottom circle you can see there with the arrow. It was just 2 small pop rivets, so that didn't particularly worry me. It is needed so that way the back cover can mount into the front cover. You can see here that there's a weird sort of a bracket attached to the OEM muffler, and that actually attaches the front and rear covers up near the tip over bar of the motorbike at the rear. So what I've done is I've made a paper template to copy that bracket and then converted that into steel, and you can see here it mounts quite neatly into that position to hold the 2 covers together. I used a reference point using the mouldings underneath the pannier, and then that set up how far in I'm going to do it. So that lines up with the mark, and then as it turns out, catcher in the rye happens to be the perfect thickness to make sure that it's parallel with the pannier and sits nicely along the edge of the bike. So let's just go ahead now and we'll fit the major muffler bracket, which is the one I have to connect to the exhaust up in there and to the bike. And you can see here that I've actually done the same marking using exactly the same reference point on the other side, ready for when I have to set this one up. So that way they'll be exactly the same across the rear of the bike, which is much better than the original Honda setup, because I found out using my template they actually weren't in the same position. My last bit of fabrication was actually to make the main bracket that holds the muffler up underneath the pannier. To do this, I used a thin sheet of aluminium. It made it quite easy to bend and shape. Once that worked out well and I knew it worked, then I converted that into 2mm steel and also welded some retained nuts onto that. Now that the fabrication on my end has been done, there was one last thing to do, and that was the joiner pipe between the bike's catalytic converter and the muffler. I don't have the equipment to bend and shape exhaust pipe, so I called on a friend to do me a favour. He does have an exhaust shop, and he's made that section for me, which fitted beautifully, and that meant the job was done. Well, there you have it. The project's finished. It took me a number of hours over 3 days to do a lot of the fabrication. But all in all, an extra $80 for the 2 joiner pipes I had made and $180 for the whole project. So I've actually started it up and done the decibel test. Now if you can trust the app on the phone, the actual decibels didn't change much. When I'm riding it, I do seem or feel that it's, or hear that it's louder. You can see on the graph I'm going to put up shortly, it doesn't change. So I actually went home came home on the freeway at about 100, 105 or so like that, 60 miles an hour, and no droning, no resonance. You could hear the exhaust. When I'm idling or into a suburban environment, certainly wasn't drawing attention, so it wasn't that loud. But when you open it up, it absolutely sounds great. It sounds like a Porsche under full flight. Really, really nice. So we'll just see how it goes for the next little while. If I'm happy with it, great. If not, I can always go back to the OEM system because I didn't make any modifications, and I didn't waste any money, or not much money. Alright, I'm going to put a soundbite on after this, just before the end of the video. They don't really represent what it really sounds like, but it gives you an idea. Thanks for watching.